What if I told you that a day in 1066 changed the course of history forever? It was a day so monumental that it reshaped an entire nation, its language, its culture, and even the way its people lived. This is the story of the Norman Conquest, a tale of ambition, betrayal, and battles that decided the fate of England. The Norman Conquest isn't just another chapter in history. It's the moment England as we know it was born. It marked the end of Anglo-Saxon rule and the beginning of a new era under Norman control. But this wasn't just a change of leadership. It was a seismic shift that influenced everything from the words we speak today to the castles that still dot the English countryside. And it all started with one man's relentless pursuit of power, William the Conqueror. Now let's rewind a bit. Before 1066, England was a very different place. It was a land of Anglo-Saxon kings, ruled by a patchwork of powerful earls and lords. The country was wealthy, but it was also vulnerable. The death of King Edward the Confessor in early 1066 left a power vacuum. And when there's no clear air, chaos is never far behind. Three men would soon step forward, each claiming they were the rightful king, but only one could win. And the stakes, nothing less than the crown of England. Now let's meet the three men who would shape the destiny of England in 1066. First, there's Harold Godwinson, the powerful Earl of Wessex, and the man who would be crowned king after Edward the Confessor's death. Harold was a seasoned warrior and a skilled leader, but his claim to the throne wasn't exactly rock solid. What if I told you that a day in 1066 changed the course of history forever? It was a day so monumental that it reshaped an entire nation, its language, its culture, and even the way its people lived. This is the story of the Norman Conquest, a tale of ambition, betrayal, and battles that decided the fate of England. The Norman Conquest isn't just another chapter in history. It's the moment England as we know it was born. It marked the end of Anglo-Saxon rule and the beginning of a new era under Norman control. But this wasn't just a change of leadership. It was a seismic shift that influenced everything from the words we speak today to the castles that still dot the English countryside. And it all started with one man's relentless pursuit of power, William the Conqueror. Now let's rewind a bit. Before 1066, England was a very different place. It was a land of Anglo-Saxon kings, ruled by a patchwork of powerful earls and lords. The country was wealthy, but it was also vulnerable. The death of King Edward the Confessor in early 1066 left a power vacuum. And when there's no clear air, chaos is never far behind. Three men would soon step forward, each claiming they were the rightful king, but only one could win. And the stakes, nothing less than the crown of England. Now let's meet the three men who would shape the destiny of England in 1066. First, there's Harold Godwinson, the powerful Earl of Wessex, and the man who would be crowned king after Edward the Confessor's death. Harold was a seasoned warrior and a skilled leader, but his claim to the throne wasn't exactly rock solid. This wasn't just a fight for power. It was a fight for survival. Only one of them could win, and the others would lose everything. The stage was set for a showdown that would change England forever. But who would come out on top? And at what cost? Everything changed on January 5th, 1066, when King Edward the Confessor died without a clear heir. Edward's death wasn't just the end of a king. It was the spark that ignited a firestorm of chaos. The throne of England was up for grabs, and everyone wanted a piece of it. Edward had been a peaceful ruler, but his death left a power vacuum. The English nobility was divided, and the country was vulnerable. Into this uncertainty stepped Harold Godwinson, the most powerful man in England after the king. But Harold's rise to power wasn't going to be smooth or uncontested. Just one day after Edward's death, Harold Godwinson was crowned king. It was a bold move, and it showed just how determined Harold was to secure his place on the throne. But his coronation didn't exactly bring peace. In fact, it made things even more complicated. For starters, Harold's claim to the throne was shaky. Yes, he had the support of the English nobles, but there were rumors that Edward had promised the crown to William of Normandy. And then there was the matter of that oath Harold had supposedly sworn to William, an oath that, if true, made Harold look like a traitor. But Harold didn't have time to worry about rumors. Almost immediately, he faced threats from all sides. To the north, the Vikings were eyeing England with hungry eyes. And to the south, William of Normandy was gathering an army, ready to make good on his claim to the throne. Harold was king, but his reign was already on shaky ground. While Harold was dealing with the chaos in England, William of Normandy was busy preparing for war. William wasn't just a skilled warrior. He was a master strategist. He knew that invading England wouldn't be easy, so he spent months building an army and gathering resources. But William didn't just rely on brute force. He also played the political game. He sent messengers to the Pope, arguing that Harold had broken a sacred oath and that he, William, was the rightful king of England. The Pope agreed and gave William his blessing, a move that turned William's invasion into a holy mission. With the Pope's support, William was able to recruit soldiers from all over Europe. He built a massive fleet of ships to carry his army across the English Channel. By the summer of 1066, William was ready to strike. All he needed was the right moment. Picture this, it's January 1066 and England is about to face a crisis that will change its destiny forever. King Edward the Confessor, a ruler known more for his piety than his power, has just died. And here's the problem. He didn't leave a clear heir. No son, no daughter, no obvious successor. Just a kingdom on the brink of chaos. Edward's death was like pulling the pin from a grenade. Suddenly, everyone wanted the throne. The English nobles were divided. The people were anxious, and across the sea, powerful men were already plotting their moves. This wasn't just a power struggle. It was a ticking time bomb, and it was about to explode. Into this chaos stepped Harold Godwinson, the Earl of Wessex, and one of the most powerful men in England. Harold didn't waste any time. Just one day after Edward's death, he was crowned king. It was a bold move, but Harold knew speed was key. If he hesitated, someone else would take the throne. But being crowned king was the easy part. The hard part was staying king. Harold's claim to the throne was shaky at best. Sure, he had the support of the English nobles, but there were whispers that Edward had promised the crown to William of Normandy. And then there was the matter of that oath. Harold had supposedly sworn to support William's claim. If true, it made Harold look like a traitor. And the challenges didn't stop there. Almost immediately, Harold faced threats from all sides. To the north, the Viking king Harald Hardrada was preparing to invade. To the south, William of Normandy was gathering an army. Harold was king, but his crown was already slipping. While Harold was scrambling to hold on to his throne, William of Normandy was busy preparing for war. William wasn't just a warrior, he was a master planner. He knew that invading England would be no small feat, so he spent months gathering resources, building ships, and recruiting soldiers. But William didn't just rely on brute force. He also played the political game. He sent messengers to the Pope, arguing that Harold had broken a sacred oath and that he, William, was the rightful king of England. The Pope agreed and gave William his blessing, a move that turned William's invasion into a holy mission. With the Pope's support, William was able to recruit soldiers from all over Europe. He built a massive fleet of ships to carry his army across the English Channel. By the summer of 1066, William was ready to strike. All he needed was the right moment, and he was about to get it. Just when Harold thought things couldn't get any worse, they did. In September 1066, Harald Hardrada, the Viking king of Norway, invaded England with a massive army. He teamed up with Harold's own brother, Tostig, who had turned traitor. Together they marched north, crushing everything in their path. Harold knew he had to act fast. He gathered his army and marched north at an incredible speed, covering over 180 miles in just 4 days. When he reached Stamford Bridge, he caught the Vikings completely off guard. They were so unprepared that many of them weren't even wearing their armor. The Battle of Stamford Bridge was brutal. Legend has it that a single Viking warrior held the bridge alone, fighting off dozens of English soldiers until someone finally killed him from below. But in the end, Harold's forces triumphed. Harald Hardrada and Tostig were both killed, and the Viking army was destroyed. It was a stunning victory for Harold, but his troubles were far from over. Harold had no time to celebrate. Just days after his victory at Stamford Bridge, he received devastating news. William of Normandy had landed in southern England with his army. William had been waiting for the right moment to invade, and with Harold distracted in the north, that moment had come. Harold immediately turned his army around and marched south. It was an incredible feat of endurance. His men had just fought a grueling battle and were exhausted, but they pushed on. Harold knew that if he didn't stop William quickly, all of England could be lost. By the time Harold reached the south, his army was tired and depleted. But there was no time to rest. William was waiting, and the two armies were about to clash in one of the most famous battles in history, the Battle of Hastings. On October 14th, 1066, the fate of England was decided on a battlefield near Hastings. Harold's army took the high ground, forming a shield wall to defend against William's forces. William, on the other hand, had a mix of archers, cavalry, and infantry, and he was determined to break through Harold's defenses. The battle raged for hours. William's cavalry charged again and again, but Harold's shield wall held firm. At one point, rumors spread that William had been killed, causing panic among his troops. But William lifted his helmet to show his face, rallying his men and turning the tide. The turning point came when Harold's army broke formation to chase after what they thought was a retreating force. It was a trick. William had feigned retreat to lure them out. Once the shield wall was broken, William's cavalry cut through Harold's army like a knife. Harold fought bravely, but he was killed. Legend has it by an arrow to the eye. With their king dead, the English forces fell apart. William had won. The Norman conquest had begun. With Harold dead and his army defeated, William of Normandy was now the undisputed ruler of England. On Christmas Day, 1066, William was crowned king in Westminster Abbey. But even this moment of triumph wasn't without drama. As the crowd inside the abbey shouted their approval, William's Norman guards outside mistook the noise for a rebellion and began setting fire to nearby buildings. It was a chaotic start to a new era. William's coronation marked the beginning of Norman rule in England. But ruling a conquered nation was no easy task. The English people were wary of their new king, and rebellions broke out across the country. William responded with brutal efficiency, crushing any resistance and building castles to secure his hold on power. This was the start of a New England, one shaped by Norman hands. The Norman conquest didn't just change who sat on the throne, it transformed every aspect of English life. Let's start with language. Before 1066, Old English was the language of the land, but with the Normans in charge, French became the language of the elite. Over time, these two languages blended, giving us the English we speak today. Ever wonder why we have fancy words like beef, from French bœuf, but also simple words like cow, from Old English kiu? That's the Norman conquest at work. Culture changed too. The Normans brought their love of architecture, building towering stone castles and grand cathedrals that still stand today. They also introduced the feudal system, a new way of organizing society where land was granted in exchange for loyalty and service. This system gave William control over his new kingdom, but it also tied the people to their lords in ways they had never experienced before. And then there was governance. William centralized power like never before. He replaced Anglo-Saxon nobles with Norman lords, ensuring that loyalty to him was absolute. He also kept detailed records of his kingdom, which brings us to one of his most famous achievements, the Domesday Book. In 1086, William ordered a massive survey of his kingdom. He wanted to know exactly who owned what, how much it was worth, and how much tax he could collect. The result was the Domesday Book, a detailed record of nearly every piece of land, every village, and every household in England. The Domesday Book wasn't just a tax collector's dream, it was a revolutionary tool for governance. It gave William unprecedented control over his kingdom, allowing him to manage resources, settle disputes, and enforce his authority. But it also gave us a priceless snapshot of life in 11th century England. From the wealthiest lord to the poorest farmer, everyone was accounted for. The name Domesday says it all. To the people of England, it felt like the final judgment, a record so thorough that there was no escaping it. And in many ways, it was. The Domesday Book was a symbol of Norman efficiency and control, and it remains one of the most important documents in English history. The Norman conquest didn't just shape England in the 11th century. It left a legacy that still influences modern Britain. Let's start with the legal system. William's centralized rule laid the groundwork for the English common law, a system that has been adopted by countries around the world. Even today, the principles of justice and governance in Britain can be traced back to Norman reforms. Then there's the language. As we mentioned earlier, the blending of Old English and Norman French gave us the rich, complex language we speak today. Words like justice, government, and castle all have Norman roots. Without 1066, English as we know it might not exist. And let's not forget the physical reminders of the Norman era. From the Tower of London to Durham Cathedral, Norman architecture still dominates the British landscape. These structures aren't just tourist attractions. They're a testament to the enduring impact of the Norman conquest. Here's a fun fact. Did you know that the Bayeux Tapestry, which depicts the events of the Norman conquest, is over 70 meters long? That's longer than an Olympic swimming pool. But what's even more fascinating is that it was likely made just a few years after the Battle of Hastings. Think of it as the medieval version of a blockbuster movie, a dramatic retelling of one of history's most pivotal moments. And here's another surprising legacy. The Norman conquest is why the British monarchs still use French phrases in their official titles. For example, the royal motto, Dieu et mon droit, which means God and my right, dates back to William's claim to the English throne. It's a small but lasting reminder of how deeply the Normans shaped British identity. So, why does the Norman conquest still captivate us over 950 years later? Maybe it's the drama, the battles, the betrayals, the larger-than-life characters. Or maybe it's the sheer scale of its impact. This wasn't just a change of rulers. It was a transformation of an entire nation. But perhaps the real reason is that the Norman conquest reminds us how fragile history can be. One battle, one decision, one moment can change everything. And in 1066, that moment came on a battlefield near Hastings. It's a story of ambition, power, and legacy, a story that continues to shape the world we live in today. If you enjoyed this journey through one of history's most pivotal moments, don't forget to hit that like button and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Was there a part of the Norman conquest that surprised you the most? Or maybe you have a question about this incredible period in history. Drop it in the comments, and I'll do my best to answer. And if you're not already part of this amazing community, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss a video as we continue to explore the stories that shaped our world. Speaking of stories that shaped our world, in the next video, we're diving into one of the most iconic landmarks in British history, the Tower of London. Built by William the Conqueror himself, this fortress has served as a royal palace, a prison, and even a zoo. But it's also the site of some of history's most dramatic and chilling tales. From royal executions to mysterious disappearances, the Tower of London has seen it all. So, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep making history come alive.